like a digital safety deposit box, like
Is
sort
it
of a
safe
place.
deposit or
What-
safety deposit?
safe-
I call it both
safety?
interchangeably.
No, you know what? You actually make a really good point here. I don't know. I'm not sure. Safe, probably safe deposit box would be my best guess, because safety deposit makes it sound like it's some sort of like I don't know, safe product of some kind, right?
I agree.
Like,
Yeah, let's go. We'll go
yeah.
with safe deposit box. Listeners,
Safe
if we are
deposit
wrong,
box.
call us out. Let us know. podcast@fpfoco.com.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from like a bank executive who knows the answer to this.
There we go.
Anyway, so right, but digital, right? Digital safe deposit box being the kind of repository, collection, or space where you keep your stuff that needs to be in a safe deposit box. But at the same time, like if it's digital, like what difference does it make?
Well, I mean, you can't really put your physical stuff in a digital safe deposit box.
This is true, right? So I think it's more of like we're thinking of a place, secure storage of some kind, that holds all of your important papers, documents, things that sort of, right, need to be there for posterity.
Yeah, the equivalent, well, the digital equivalent of this big box at the bank that's under lock and key, that's inside of a safe that's under another lock and key.
You know, it occurred to me, like, I'm sure some of our listeners know what a safe deposit box is, and I'm sure there are several that do not have any idea, just like my kids don't know what a checkbook is, right? They're like, wait, somebody has to write a check, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that even do, right? So it's like, yeah, if you're listening and you are unaware, you're like, what the heck are they talking about? Safe deposit, safety deposit, what is that? There is actually vault space in banks that under lock and key, you can put things, and you have a key and the bank has a key, and you both have to turn your keys. This is a very like ritual process of opening the box. And that's where you get your stuff, your possessions out of. You can put valuables in there. You can put important papers, like the whole thing.
I used to have one when I was a kid with some of my my favorite valuable coins in it. Like I had a Star Wars coin that was in my safe deposit box at the bank.
I dig it. Well, let's talk about the digital version of this on today's episode of Money and Taxes from BB to XYZ, where we break down a single money topic and explain how it could affect those across the generations from baby boomers to X, Y, and Z. I'm Jason Speciner, certified financial planner and enrolled agent.
And I'm Regina Neenan, certified financial planner and accredited behavioral finance professional. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some things, some physical things, you can make digital copies of, but you still have to keep the physical versions. Like think your social security card, like I mentioned, your ID, maybe your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, and your estate documents.
Right? Your wills, your trusts, your powers of attorney, all of those things are important to some, they're going to have some function at some point. And if you don't have the original, there could be some questions about the validity of something. And so those originals need to stay safe somewhere so that they don't get destroyed and, put somebody in a pinch.
Yeah, you might keep them at your home in a fire safe. You may keep them at the bank in your actual physical safe deposit box, or you might have them somewhere special at your home where you can easily access them and where folks who are important to those estate documents can find them when your time comes.
Yeah. And importantly, like I was even hearing, this is anecdotal, but not all that long ago, someone mentioning, and maybe I was reading this online, that like a fire safe, like gets the job done for a small amount of time. And if there is truly a fire that is, destroys a house, like it's very difficult for that fire safe to protect everything in there. So it's also just as important to consider, like, yes, like keep it in there, but at the same time, like there are going to be some things, right, that maybe are worth taking off site, if you will. And that's sort of where the concept of a safe deposit box, or just having like a fire safe that is rated for like a long, long time, right? Which can get expensive, I'm sure. But yeah, absolutely. Offsite storage, just like, offsite backups for digital data and so on, which we'll sort of touch on in the digital side of this, that's all very useful for that sort of scenario.
Yeah. So what would you put in this digital safe deposit box? Well, copies of everything that we mentioned.
Yeah.
And all of your other digital assets, which are probably password protected or multi-factor authentication protected. Maybe you have a pass key that protects that as well. So something happens to you, you are no longer with us. Your next of kin, your beneficiaries, those folks might need to access your digital assets, and they're going to need a way to get to those when you are not there to unlock them for them.
Right, right. And there are services, right, that are already thinking about this. Like I could think of Apple as an example with the iPhone, and they have the deputy or whatever it's called, where you can name somebody who will take over your account if something happens to you. Um, and that then, of course, like if somebody gets to your iCloud, then of course they have the ability to probably access lots of different things if you store your passwords there, right, and all of that. And this is, again, we're talking about like, last week with Dirty Dozen, we're talking about people, or a few weeks ago with Dirty Dozen, talking about people who are taking information from you and you don't want them to. Like in this case, you do, of course, you want to make it accessible to them. So using that service like that, like really helps with sort of adding to this. Again, I'm going to start using my air quotes with digital safe deposit box because it's really sort of more nebulous than like a centralized location.
Yeah, it can take on many forms. What you were talking about was the legacy contact access key.
Yes.
I created one of these pretty recently for my partner, Zach. And it's just a single PDF with a QR code and a very, very long access code following it. That somebody would have to type in to access your information. So very difficult. I mean, this thing takes up 3 lines and probably like 25-point font. It's massive.
Yeah. And I think there's a setting to it, and I don't know if this was a part of that or not, where you can actually, inside of your iCloud account, you can add the like contact information of this person, and then they get an alert that says like, hey, I've added you, right? So that they, right, ultimately know that they have this authority and that they can do that, because that's important too. Like, right, you could put everything you want in all these different places, and all, if no one knows about it, it's gone, right? It may not be there, right? So you have to also make sure that you somehow communicate the location of these things.
Yeah, and I'm sure Samsung or Android has something similar, but on the Apple side of things, like I think if somebody got into my phone, I've got, my auto insurance and my renter's insurance app on there. I've got my health insurance app. I've got banking apps. Really everything that someone would need to access, a lot of it's right in my phone. So that's one example of how you could use your phone as a digital safe deposit box of sorts.
Yes, right. It's the place that sort of holds the keys to the castle, if you will, or the keys to the safe in this case. One sort of thought I had is like when I was talking about how it's bigger than just a single item, but our listeners are probably still wondering like what are the sort of like locations or logistics of this, right? And so as we talk about like having an iCloud account, or maybe you have a Google account, you have these cloud platforms, right, that allow for file storage and do so, and of course validate and verify this with your provider, do so in an encrypted way. That sort of becomes one of the stopping points, especially for these files, right? We're talking copies of social security cards, birth certificates, copies of, right, your will, copies of your other estate documents, copies of, right, like the title to your car, right? All of those things in a file that is kind of accomplishing 2 goals. One is it's accessible to you, right? Because you want to be able to get to that copy if you need it. But then also that it is protected in a way that doesn't involve, like if something happened to the single device that you were using, like it would just disappear, right? So it needs to be in some sort of like backed up ecosystem, and typically the cloud is of course going to help us, right? The cloud is going to help us do that because it's on a server somewhere.
Yeah, I love the idea of just getting organized to simplify your financial life, to have all your things in one place, but also serving that dual purpose. Maybe you are unable to make decisions for yourself. You're in the hospital, something's going on. Somebody has the ability to access this, like your medical power of attorney. They can go in and actually get the documents that they'll need to serve as that medical power of attorney. They can also access your health insurance information. But as you mentioned, this is kind of nebulous. So how can somebody get started to get this organization in place if they haven't done it before?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I think about this essential tools for this, I think there are basically 3 kind of components to it. One would be something that stores your passwords, something that stores your sort of like access to things, right? That keeps the keys. And there are plenty of services, 1Pass, LastPass, browsers like Chrome, iCloud, right? These are all built into these things, or there's a separate service available. I prefer, and we use a separate service as opposed to a browser-based one, just simply because, or the Apple one, because it's not as connected to that ecosystem, right? It sort of
Yeah.
disperses that. The next part, or the next sort of thing, of course, then is places to keep files, right? Places to keep all of the different pieces and components. So that might be Google Drive, that might be iCloud, right? The files on iCloud, that might be Dropbox or Box or any of these other services out there. But that's a place where you're taking the files off of a local place, you're backing them up essentially, but also being able to access them sort of right there. And then the third thing is this sort of, I guess, the optional part to this would be something that is aggregating all of this data and putting it in a place, allowing you to make notes on it and do all of these, sort of instructions. Everplans is a service that comes to mind where they have this sort of platform that does all of that. It's sort of consolidating all this information and curating it for you. But again, that's the third piece, I think, again, being an optional one, just if you want to make additional clarity to your digital belongings.
Yeah, and the great thing about a lot of the services that you mentioned is there's a free version of quite a few of them. I know there's a basic
Yeah.
Everplans that you can get into. And then a lot of the cloud storage services, you can get, a certain amount of storage for free just by having a login to that service.
Yeah. And I mean, keep in mind, like, ultimately you have this stuff for yourself, right, to access. But again, just a reminder, like, this will make things immensely easier on survivors when you pass away. If you have your affairs organized, consolidated in something that's easy to access, digital, and that they can access, right? So it's also a part of that estate planning, right? If doing all of the stuff involved in not only just the documents, but also the other things, is having that sort of access for someone so that it makes their life easier as they're grieving a loss.
Yeah, so if you're looking to get started, maybe you've done the things that Jason, you just mentioned, you've decided where to keep these things, how you might take some notes on them. Well, which things do you actually start saving in those places very securely? Start with the basics. Maybe begin with your contact information, your name, your social security number, your address, your phone number. Take a scan of your driver's license. Take a scan of that social security card. If you don't have a birth certificate, don't worry about that quite yet. Just start with some basic items like those. After that, maybe you take note of which devices you have, like your phone, your tablet, your laptop, and what the passwords to those are, so that other folks who are taking care of things for you could easily access those and the myriad apps and passwords that those might have inside of them.
Yeah, that's all great advice. And if you think about the specific sort of data you're gathering, we talk about needing to keep a certain year's worth of tax return data in that 3-year window. That information, right, for your financial affairs is generally going to capture almost all of it, right? So having a copy of your tax return and tax records in this digital safe deposit box is an important part. And the other thing I would think about is, like, for each piece of data that you add, if you talked about just starting with your basic stuff and writing that down somewhere, like, then prove it, right? Okay, I was born on this date. Here's the birth certificate. I can prove it. I am, whatever, all of the different things, like, prove it with digital copies of that stuff that you would need to. And then, yeah, you will have very likely collected the right stuff in your digital safe deposit box.
And put a little note in, say, like, here's my state ID, my driver's license. I keep it in my wallet. My social security card, I keep in the fire safe along with my birth certificate. And as you go through with, like, you get your healthcare insurance renewal through maybe an online marketplace or through your employer, take a scan of the new policy, toss that into the digital safe deposit box. You get a renewal for your home or your auto insurance. Take a quick scan, toss it in the safe deposit box.
Or even better yet, they send you a digital file. You just drag and drop it in there, right? I mean, that would be ideal. And if you don't have to, deal with figuring out how to make paper digital, that's great. Now, if you do, right, there are a number of ways to accomplish it. I used to, and still have access to, I have access to high-speed scanners. We use them in the office. Everyone who comes in, who has their tax return done, I'm sure you've seen this, and you're like, does that thing scan both sides and go that fast? Yeah, it does everything, right? But then it also sort of, like, is inconvenient because I have to find a scanner and I have to do the whole thing. There are apps that are really good at creating what look like exact scans of paperwork with just the phone camera. Genius Scan is the one I've used and have sort of switched to almost exclusively for the stuff that I do want to archive, right? That I do want to make into a digital. And it's just a piece of cake. You just point your phone at it, takes it, and then it uploads it to wherever you tell it to, like by default. And that would be your digital safe deposit box if you're wanting it to work that way. So it's
Easy
a really
peasy.
handy way. Yeah, absolutely.
I actually use the scanning function inside of the Notes app on my iPhone. Super easy to do it that way too. Maybe not as high quality as your Genius Scan, but hey, it gets the job done.
Yeah, there's so many different ways, especially with just like the quality of cameras now, right? You used to take a photo with a cell phone camera and you couldn't see, even like people, like they would be all fuzzy. Like now you can get down to like the megapixels density is so much. There's so much sort of data that's captured that it really can make modern phone cameras can really make great images.
Well, I'm going to get us into today's takeaways here with takeaway number 1. However you start to organize your digital safe deposit box, start simple and build it over time. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to run the gamut and take an entire day to do all the scanning and updating and noting where the physical copies are. Just start somewhere, start simple, and add a little bit more over time.
And takeaway number 2, the components of a digital safe deposit box, the 3 key ones here: a place to store your passwords and other important, stats and figures and numbers, a place to store your files, right? So the actual like PDFs and JPEGs and all of the stuff that comes out of your sort of diligence to gather these documents. And then third, the optional one, is a place to sort of aggregate and curate all of that information with notes and all of that extra stuff that can really help somebody in the future that's not you manage all that data.
And takeaway number 3, as it is estate planning focus month here at FP FOCO, some of the important forever documents that you can begin with are your estate plans, along with your driver's license and social security card for a really simple start.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good time and chance to sort of focus in on your estate plan, just because that's a critical part to anyone's financial plan for sure.
And since we just wrapped up tax season here, throw a copy of your tax return in there too.
Yep.
If you have other ideas of things that you should start building your digital safe deposit box with, reach out to us, podcast@fpfoco.com. You can find that in the show notes, and you can also follow us on your favorite social media channels at FPFoco.
Awesome. Well, hey, happy digitizing, and we'll talk to you soon.
Jason Speciner and Regina Neenan are investment advisor representatives of FP FOCO, a registered investment advisor. The information in this podcast is provided for general educational and entertainment purposes only. It may not apply to you or your specific circumstances and should not be considered financial, investment, or tax advice.